Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
All right, welcome into the show. Before I forget, Brandon, I do want to make sure that we're mentioning China McCarney's foundation, Athletes Against Anxiety and Depression Foundation.org. That's www.aadf.org. And, you know, making sure that the listeners get out there and with all of the resources that organization has to offer, you know, it's definitely one of those things we want to make sure that everybody is dialed into and going to that website.
And he's starting to get NIL athletes as well. If you follow him on social media, he's starting to bring athletes on board, which is amazing. And he's just doing a tremendous job.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
No, I think it's great. And definitely one of those things. And I know we have China lined up to do some stuff later on in the year where he's going to break down some of the things, some of the content that's on that website. So that we're really looking forward to that, because that was one of those guests that we get a lot of feedback on, because as we see, and it's amazing how that conversation we had with him, not that we didn't know that this was going on, but that, you know, people were struggling with some of these issues. Sure. But the conversation we had with him, I feel shines such a kind of magnified for me, anyhow, so many more stories that are out there, and you hear it all the time.
Well, for sure. And it's those guests that we've had that are really open and transparent. Those seem to be the ones that really hit different, whether it's him or Chris Gingham or just all of them. I mean, we've talked about them before that just kind of share just the truth, maybe. Right. I mean, there's just so little of that anymore, in terms of people just being honest that, hey, you know what, some days I don't have my A game. And, you know, we talk about that from a mental perspective as a player and as just a human being, like, hey, how do I give you everything I've got, even though I might have my C game today?
Yeah.
And it's rare that gets shared. And so, no, I love it. I love what China's doing, and super stoked for him and the organization.
Absolutely. And we've got a great guest tonight in Doug Little, who's the head baseball coach at Potomac State College in West Virginia. And speaking of that kind of growth, right, that we all face, whether you're going through some challenges, is being able to understand, as you just pointed out, you know, bringing 100% of whatever you brought that day. Doug is a, head coach at a junior college and has that appreciation for, as he talks about accelerated growth, but it's that idea that, hey, I only got a 2-year window here. Yep. I got to make some things happen. But then he also, the listeners will hear, talks about patience, not just from a player perspective, but from a coach perspective. He gets into, how that's something that he's continuing to work on individually. But I think the listeners are really going to appreciate that additional window into how different it is at the JUCO level. It's still the same baseball. It's still the same on the field. And boy, oh boy, they got great talent at that level. But there's some differences there.
It is, and it presents challenges as a coach, especially when you're trying to instill a culture. And as you and I definitely know, and most of the listeners, putting that foundation and that culture takes time. And we talk about the process and trusting it and all that kind of stuff. And it just magnifies what Doug has done and how successful he's been. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it really is.
And I'm always amazed, and we've talked about this, but that whole idea, Sean O'Neill says about success leaves clues. And, every coach that we've been fortunate to have on this show, whether it's Doug Little, Scott Foxhall, JT Heenan, Jeremy Sheetinger, all of them, you see all of these commonalities in the things that they say and the way they approach things, because these are all successful coaches.
For sure.
But it's so interesting for us when we're talking to Doug about how he goes out and the things he's saying to those pitchers and what his goal is when he's on the mound, during that mound visit. And it flashes me back to Scott Foxhall, or it flashes me back to some of the things JT Heenan was saying, because all of these guys that get it, and JT's at that other end of the spectrum. He's kind of just starting out in his coaching career, where some of the other guests we've had have been doing it for a while. But I'm always amazed that you're doing it right when there's so many consistencies across the board. But the one thing I really appreciated about Doug, and this is why I think he's such an outstanding coach, and as I've said, I'm a huge fan, is even though he has been doing this at a very, very high level for 25 years. That whole growth mindset we talk about in this conversation, you all will hear him talking about handling his pitchers, and something he heard recently or has been observing in the last few years, where it's making him think differently now. And he's, maybe going to change the way he's doing some things.
For sure. And it just, like you said, it reemphasizes the fact that just because you've been doing it a certain way doesn't mean that you can't look outside. And we've talked about it before. One of the worst things that you can hear as either a player, a coach, hell, an employee or an employer, don't ever say, well, we do it because that's how we've always done it. Yeah. That's terrible. Like, that's not getting the job done. And a guy that, like Doug, who's creeping up on 800 wins, he's getting the job done. So if a guy that is that successful can evaluate, new ideas, I mean, everybody can. So I'm excited for listeners to hear from him.
Absolutely. So get your pen and paper ready. Here's Doug Little. All right, Brandon, we're fortunate tonight. This is probably, and I'm not just saying this to embarrass him because I don't think it will, but this is one of my favorite baseball guys. I've known Doug Little for a long time. I'm not going to go into all the details on that in age, either one of us, but
you did just have a 50th birthday, so
that's true.
It's not
I can't hide
hard
it.
to imagine.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
It wasn't last week. Let's just say that. Yeah. But Doug actually was an assistant coach at West Virginia Wesleyan in West Virginia when I was in high school, and he had come down to recruit we had a pretty successful team that in 1990, and it was like fishing in a barrel for Wesleyan to basically come down there, right? So, absolutely. Doug, welcome to the show, and it's great to see you and be able to talk to you again.
Well, thank you. I appreciate y'all having me. Been looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that was a pretty easy. I mean, I think 8 of the 9 starters on that high school team ended up going and playing college baseball. And I think you got at least 2 of them.
Yeah, it's amazing. That was quite a team. And it's hard to believe it's been that long ago.
I know. Isn't that the truth? Yeah. I mean, to me, it feels like it's just like yesterday. But we were talking, Doug, Brandon and I, a little bit earlier today about just the success you've had there at Potomac State College in West Virginia, junior college program in Kaiser, West Virginia. And just from the facilities, from, everything you all have been able to accomplish. I mean, when you think about the fact that you're starting your 25th season as a head coach there, 19. Now, some of these numbers blew me away when I was looking at this today. 19 seasons with 30 or more wins, creeping up on 800 in the wins total there. Multiple Coach of the Year, awards and all that good stuff. Do you ever take time to just sit back and say, this has been pretty cool?
Well, I appreciate all those kind words. And honestly, not really.
Yeah.
it's just one thing that you just keep going.
Yeah.
And, you're as a JUCO program, JUCO coaches are so busy because you got to wear more than one hat. So you really don't have time to sit and reflect on it, which is, I like it. It keeps you focused on the future and what's down the road. But yeah, we've been fortunate what we've been able to accomplish here, and our school does a really good job of supporting us. So I'm very fortunate in that aspect. They really, whenever we need something, they're open to listen to it. And if they can do it, they help us. So we're very fortunate in that aspect. And we've been able to recruit and get good players. And I think the key to being a good coach is having good players.
And that's
the
true.
Players, it makes coaching a lot easier. That's for sure.
Funny how it works out that way, right? Yes. So you grew up in Parkersburg, West Virginia. What sports did you play as a kid? What were some of the things you got into?
I played baseball and a little bit of basketball, but just in high school, just baseball.
Yeah. Now,
did you have football at a young age?
Did you? Was it? Did you know? I mean, did you just catch that bug with baseball early on? Was that pretty much what it was? Yeah, and it's funny. We were talking about this the other day in my to our team, and playoffs are on now, and we're talking to our guys about if you get an opportunity, sit down and watch a baseball game all the way through. And I know it's difficult for people to sit down and watch a game all the way through, but back in my time, and probably in your time, you were lucky if you got to see 2 baseball games on TV a week. I can remember sitting down and watching those games from beginning to end because you only got to see 2 games. Yeah. And now you can sit and watch games every single day. And I've got that MLB extra innings package and I can watch every game. And I don't know if our guys have ever sit down and watch a game from beginning to end. And, you can learn so much by doing that. Absolutely.
For sure. It's interesting too. You talk about just kind of how things have changed over the years. We had talked to Scott Foxhall, who's the pitching coach down at Mississippi State, and he was a former teammate of ours. And he said one of the things that they do, Doug, is they really look for that kind of multi-sport athlete. Is that something that you kind of look for? And is there what's kind of the thought process behind it if you do?
Yeah, I definitely do. Love having them multi-sport athletes. And I think it's great because it keeps kids in shape all year long, keeps their competitive juices going. We just had a kid in for a visit today. That's a 2-sport athlete. And one year we had a young man on our team that played for us and went to West Virginia and played. He was a 4-sport athlete in high school. Yeah. And we've never had another guy like that. But I definitely like to see that in the recruiting process when recruiting kids that play multiple sports. I just think it helps with everything from athletic ability, makes it quicker. We've got a kid right now playing at Coastal Carolina that was a 2-sport athlete in high school. He was our second baseman, and he played soccer in high school. And his feet are so quick, I think, because of playing soccer. And it really has helped him in baseball with footwork as an infielder. And so, yeah, I love those dual sport athletes. I think it's really good.
It kind of helps with the burnout too, right? Like
100%.
That way,
100%.
Which is super critical going into college. We John and I have touched on it a little bit from a mental perspective. Is that you never want the kid at the end of the season to be glad that the season's over.
Absolutely,
right?
100%.
Yeah.
But you're right, and I think that is such a big thing. And as time has gone on from when I started coaching to now, it seems like, and I mean this in a good way, but sports, it's that trickle down effect. What you see at the professional level is going to trickle down to college and trickles down to high school, the good and the bad, unfortunately. But in college, and sports become almost like a job. It's nonstop. It's 7 days a week. It's people call it the grind and I call it the grind, but I love the grind. It's a lovable grind, but it seems like sports have become more job-like. And it's easy for kids to get burned out if they're not careful.
Yeah. And one of the benefits you guys have, Doug, at that JUCO level is you get that fall season, right? I mean, a lot of teams, the 4-year schools are playing some intra-squad games and all of that, but you guys get a chance to put together a pretty substantial schedule. What are some of the things you're looking to find out about your team or looking to accomplish in the fall?
And that's a great question. And we've when our fall is over with, we will have gotten 25 games in this fall. Now that includes some inter squads, and then we've played some 4-year schools. Like we play 5 Division I teams this fall. Now, this weekend we got a big weekend. This weekend coming up tomorrow, we go to Radford for a doubleheader and play Radford, and then on Sunday we go to George Washington and play them a doubleheader on Sunday. And I didn't want to have 28 innings against Division I team on one inning in one weekend, but we had to change it around. But our guys love playing against those teams. They get fired up, juiced up because you're playing Division I guys, and you get a chance to get seen, and you're playing against really good competition. And we get knocked around a little bit from time to time, but it's really good for us. It helps prepare us. And we really, our whole fall is trying to find, my lights went out and he waved my, sorry about that.
Motion.
Oh yeah. That's what.
Yeah. We're,
there you go.
We're going green here at WV. They put those things in and I got to sit at my desk sometimes and do this to get the lights to turn back on. It's unbelievable.
That's awesome. I thought maybe someone had paid a bill or something.
Or he was trying to get off an island. I didn't know what was going on. West Virginia, we're going green.
That's awesome. But go ahead.
We try to take our fall, and it's kind of like a spring training that those games don't count on our record. We play 25 games. Our pitchers will have about 20 innings in this fall. Our hitters will have around 70 to 80 plate appearances.
Wow.
And it kind of like for some of our high school guys, some of them didn't play 25 games in high school because the season's so short. So it almost puts them through another whole year. So it gives us a chance to teach, put guys in competitive situations, see what they can do. And by the end of the fall, we have a pretty good idea about who our top 12 hitters are and our top 12 pitchers are going into the spring. And I love the fall. The fall is the best time as far as, obviously the spring when the real season starts is great, but the fall is awesome for coaches because you get a chance to find out what guys can do. You put them in situations and it's not a win to all thing. It's your development. It's more about development. And also in the fall, with junior college, we can practice so much more year round than any other level of college. So we practice or play 6 days out of 7. Mondays are usually our off days. And we try to keep our practices shorter. Like we practice about 2.5 hours a day from start to finish. From the time we start to our guys walk out, about 2.5 hours a day. Because I'll be honest with you, I was this way as a player. After about 2 hours and 15 minutes, you start losing focus and attention span, and it goes down. And we try to do it more days, but shorter times. And I found through the years that's really worked with attention span and help guys with retention and retaining stuff that we teach. And it really, I think, helps out with the burnout factor.
There's a lot of research behind what you just said there because it's so true, is that shorter spurts, making sure that you're getting intentional practice, right? That there's something, you have a plan, and I know you guys do, I've seen it firsthand, but having a plan of what you're going to accomplish in those 2 hours and 15 minutes, because that's probably one of the most frustrating things for players is, hey, I don't mind coming out and investing the 2 hours and 15 minutes, but let's get something out of this, right? Let's make sure that we have something that we're going to be trying to accomplish. And it's a really good point you made about the season, basically getting an extra season, because that's one of the challenges. And we had on Ed Wildis, we had a whole Garrett collection. Every head coach that's ever played or ever coached at Garrett as a head coach, with the exception of one, we had on our show about, I don't know, it's probably been about 15 or 20 shows ago. And one of the things that we talked to them about is the challenges as a JUCO coach of having such young guys coming in. I mean, you have to find some leaders out of your freshmen and sophomores. And quite frankly, these are guys that probably at 18, 19 years old need a few leaders themselves.
No question. It's definitely a different animal. And, at the junior college level, and this by being at it, I was just talking, we had a recruit in today for a visit, and I talk about recruits about this every time they visit, that the nice thing about a junior college, it's freshmen and sophomores. We don't have any juniors. We don't have any seniors to compete against. So it's kids your age and 1 year older. And the chance to play right away is a lot greater. But I told him that in junior college, I think junior college coaches, no matter what the sport is, force their younger players to grow up quicker than they would at a 4-year school, because you're counting on them as freshmen to help you win games. And you're right. It seems like in recent years, our best leaders were not vocal guys. It was lead by example guys. They're kind of quiet guys, but they lead by example. And I think, for younger kids, it's hard for an 18 or 19-year-old to say, take the bull by the horns and I'm going to be a leader here. But you'll find those guys every once in a while. But, we honestly don't have team captains. We never have, and we probably should. But I found that at the junior college level, it makes it difficult. I think in my opinion, you're putting a little bit more stress or pressure on a kid to be a team captain. So our guys that are our sophomores, that are the older guys, they all lead by example and lead with what we do, because they've been through it for a year, and that seems to work pretty good. But you're exactly right. It's when it comes to junior college, you get half your team turnover every year,
right?
And you're losing guys and gaining guys, and it's a constant battle to get guys, kind of blend together.
Sure.
So Doug, how do you do that as a coach and being as successful as you are? Clearly, there's this culture that you set, but with that accelerated time frame that you have, because you do have the turnover that you have, how do you implement that so quickly, and how do you do it successfully, given the time constraints that you have?
That's a good question. It's a constant. It's something that's constant. And I think for us, we've been fortunate that we've been doing it for a long enough time that through the years, you kind of learn what works and what don't work, and you make adjustments and flexible and stuff like that. But I know for us, like during the recruiting process, we kind of go over what's expected of guys before they get here. During the recruiting process, here's what we're looking for. I mean, it's always baseball talent, but here we're going to, we work on being on time, and we kind of lay the groundwork before they get here so they know what to expect. And I think we do a really good job in the recruiting process of painting a realistic picture. So when they get here, they know what, we don't do a lot of sugarcoating of things and just kind of tell guys black and white, here's what it is. And then when they get here, we have a team meeting our first day and kind of set the tone in that with what we're looking for and what we do with team rules. And honestly, being organized and having a plan of attack and just kind of following it. And it's always a work in progress, but the guys, we have pretty high expectations, and those guys, every player on the team knows what they are. The sophomores that's been through it for a year really do help with the younger guys to kind of bring them along. And, you don't have the older guys, so that's what you kind of rely on. And every junior college is in the same situation as we're in. I just think we do a really good job at it. And I think our culture and our environment is a caring culture that we want you to develop by working hard and being a good person on and off the field. And, not every guy's an angel. Right. You're going to have some guys that you got to keep your thumb on, but we're very fortunate. I think we can eliminate a lot of problems in the recruiting process. And when we get here, we have guys that are pretty much focused on, and I love coaching at the junior college level, because our guys know, junior college guys know, that if they don't do the job in the classroom or on the field, that they're not going to have a chance to advance. And honestly, you don't have to motivate guys a whole lot at this level, because they know if they don't do the work, that they're not going to be able to use it as a stepping stone to go on to bigger and better things. And I think them knowing that really helps in that process of team culture.
I think it's so important because we know how important culture is. I mean, it's determines that success or failure of any program.
Yes.
And the way you guys do it, and I love the fact that you're managing expectations, setting expectations early on, setting that standard in the recruiting process. And for you young coaches out there listening to this, it's really important to be up front because, the last thing you want is you've chosen this program. Now you get to the program and it's something completely different than what it was like in the recruiting process. It's not good for you as a coach, not good for the players. Is it something that you guys spend a lot of time on? And I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Do you think culture is like a coach driven thing, or is it player driven, or does it have to be a mix? Like, do you really think it needs to be everybody's involvement in that?
I think everybody's involved, but I think it's coach driven.
Yeah.
And then the guys have to buy into it.
Yep.
And it's definitely a two-way street because it takes both to do it. But I think, in my opinion, it's more of a coach driven thing. And I've always heard through the years, and you probably heard it, that a team is a reflection of their coach.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And culture is such a huge part of a team's success or failure. That culture, it can't be overstated enough. That culture is huge.
Yeah. Was there a moment, Doug, that in the 25 years you've been at Potomac State that you kind of thought, I think we're there as far as that culture? Do you remember a time frame, maybe a window where you were like, you know what, I'm looking around, we're there. I think we can kind of settle in on this one from a culture standpoint.
I think probably my first or second year here, we were at that time a Division II junior college, and we had a really good talented team. And we ended up in 90, what year would that have been? In 93. We ended up going to the JUCO World Series in 93, and we had an all freshman team.
Wow.
And we got out there and honestly didn't know what to expect when we got there. And honestly, I was just hoping to be competitive in 2 games. It was double elimination. I thought, if we're competitive and close in 2 games, I'll be happy. And we get out there and we're just as good as anybody else. And we end up getting all the way to the championship game and getting beat. And honestly, that success, it really snowballed for us, and it's taken us to where we are now. And we spent 3 years in Division II. And then in 2000, when I came back from WVU back here to coach again, we made the move up to Division I in 2000 JUCO. And honestly, that back in 93, that kind of propelled us, and it just kind of snowballed, and we've been able to keep it going, honestly. Now, JUCO's a great route. It's a very talented level of baseball.
Sure.
And through the years, other junior colleges have kind of caught up and doing a better job. Their facilities are better. The coaches are getting better. The talent level that they're recruiting is getting better. And it's a lot more level playing field than it was back in 92, 93. But I think those early years of us having success kind of propelled us to where we are today. And I've been very fortunate. If we hadn't had winning teams there in 93, 94, my coaching profession, or not profession, my coaching career probably would have went in a different direction. So we were fortunate that we had talented players and they bought in, and those guys are kind of the foundation for what we do today. And we've been able to build off of it. So I've been very fortunate, very lucky in that aspect.
I think it's an amazing thing, and it's something that, I know across the country. You mentioned Potomac State baseball. People know what that means. I mean, they know that you're talking about a winning program, that, you're going to get players, and that helps from a recruiting standpoint as well. I'm talking about those players moving on to that 4-year school because they know they're getting guys that know how to win. And that's so important for, you probably think back, Doug, when you first started there and how many 4-year schools were calling you pretty routinely or showing up in the fall. I'd say it wasn't near as much as it is now, right? Because they know what kind of quality players are getting, and they know that they know how to do it the right way. And that's such a big feature for you guys there at Potomac State.
Well, thank you. And you're right. It's took a while to build, and you have to build up, relationships and credibility. And And, it's like I tell our guys that we've been doing this too long and we know too many people to BS people. And
Right.
I think when coaches call us, they know we're going to shoot them straight and tell them about a player's ability. And we'll tell the guys, tell our players, say, listen, we're going to shoot scouts and college coaches straight when it comes to your work ethic, your coachability and those type things. And I think sometimes, we've gotten a reputation for that. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, and I tell recruits this in the recruiting process, it's not milk and cookies here.
Yeah.
We're going to take care of you and treat you fair,
Right.
and we're going to help you develop. And there's nobody, we're in your corner. We're going to be the biggest people in your corner wanting you to do well because it makes us look smart. It means that we recruited a good player and they worked hard and been able to move on. So we're pulling for everybody. But we're pretty disciplined. We're not Army or military discipline,
Yeah.
but I think we paint a realistic picture. And then when guys get here, it's exactly as they were told. And, I tell guys in the recruiting process, if you're a player that has to be constantly stroked and told how good you are, don't come here because we're going to praise you when you need it and motivate you when you need it. But if you're relying on us to motivate you and stroke you all the way, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And honestly, something you're very well aware of is we're looking for guys that are mentally tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And recruits, we tell our recruits, like, you're doing your homework, you're visiting and looking at our college. If you have teammates that played for us, talk to them. Find out as much information about us as you can, because we're doing the same thing about you. We're checking with your coach. What's he like? Is he a tough kid? Does he like to compete? Those type things. And, as a matter of fact, I was talking to your old coach, Coach Shields, today about kids and asked him about kids down in that area. What's this kid like? Is he mentally tough? Is he a good kid? Is he a hard worker? And those are the kind of kids you're looking for. And so I think all that stuff all works together to get kids where they need to be.
And you've seen it. I mean, you've been around the game long enough now that you've seen this evolution. We talk about this on the show all the time about starting to talk more and more over the last 5 years or so about that mentally, that mental performance piece of it, the mentally tough kid, because we never really, it was always there, but we never really defined it. We never really started to understand, like, hey, if I have two guys that are talent-wise pretty equal, but the one guy deals with adversity a little bit better. He can handle the pressure a little bit better. He wants the bat in the big situation. Like, now we've started to label that a little bit more,
Yes.
But the flip side to that, though, I think the evolution of athletes and probably society has more to do this with anything is there's also been this kind of participation trophy mindset that creeps in of the parents like, oh, it's okay. It's all right if you went 0 for 20, and all of these things or whatever. And it's like, now all of a sudden, these are I mean, you're not recruiting the guy that goes 0 for 20, but at the same time, though, you're getting the results of some of that. Is that something that you guys have found yourselves having to work more closely with or integrate more into how your practices go, as far as starting to put them, you mentioned earlier, in tough situations, to identify that and maybe even work with people through it, how to go pitch to pitch and that kind of thing?
Yes, there's no doubt. And I think that's the separator.
Yeah.
From the really good athletes, the average athletes, is that mental toughness. And it just can't be stated enough. And ever since I played, ever since I coached, we've been talking and working on making guys more mentally tough. Mm-hmm. And I think you can definitely do that. The military's done it for years, taking guys and making them mentally tough by putting them through a bunch of stuff and trying to make them mentally tough to where they don't give in battle and stuff. And I know coaches do that to a certain extent. And we've done it since my 25th, in my first year of coaching. We've always worked on trying to, make things tough on kids. So, you can count on when when it comes time to do so. But really, like you said, over the last 5 or 6 years, there's been even more emphasis on it because, you got some kids that's coming out of high school that's no different than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But you got some other guys coming out of high school that's softer than they were 20 or 30 years ago. And you can find out real quick when adversity hits who's got the grit and who don't.
Yeah.
And the guys that don't, it's not like we can make trades in college baseball. So we got to take the guys that we have that need to get tougher and try to find a way to put them in situations to get them more mentally tough. And I've seen that happen so many times in the last 10 years, especially kids, that it takes a little bit of prodding and pushing and putting them into situations, and they've gotten more mentally tough as each year goes by. And we've got a couple of pitchers on our team this year that's in their second year with us, and they've made such huge strides in their mental toughness side compared to where they were a couple of years ago. And it's just from, I think, you talking to them about, when you don't have success, how do you handle it?
Yep.
And we talk about the mental side probably more so than any other aspect. And I teach a coaching class here, and we talk about this, that as coaches through the years, we spend more time on the physical part of getting athletes ready, and we should be spending more time on the mental part and probably not as much time on the physical part. Because it's the separator, as you know. Yeah. You can make up for a lot of inadequacies you have as a player by being mentally tough.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're spot on with that. I mean, it's the old, the player with A skills with B attitude is going to lose to the player with B skills and A attitude every single time.
Question.
And you see it all the time. And you get those guys that aren't willing to work. Turtle Thomas has a really great, Turtle has a really great thing he talks about. He used to say is the rock, the jelly bean, and the marshmallow. And he says, the rocks as a coach, those are those dependable, they're tough as nails, always in it. They'll grind, they'll scratch, they'll claw. He says, and then the marshmallows, those are pretty easy to identify too. The ones that fool you from time to time is that jelly bean, hard on the outside, but soft on the inside.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah. They're the ones that they present like that rock, but then when it really gets down to it in that 8th or 9th inning, you find out that you just got a marshmallow on your hands.
Absolutely. Well put.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty cool thing. One of the things, and Brandon mentioned talking to Scott Foxhall a few shows ago, one of the things we talked to him, and I know you work with the pitchers a lot, Coach Schaefer works with the hitters. But one of the things that we talked to him was, speaking of that mental toughness, is that really important moment when you're having to go out on that mound and have that visit with the pitcher. And, it could be that just things are falling apart. For whatever reason, might be a mechanical thing, might just be that all of a sudden you've had a few bad breaks around that inning. What, as a coach, are you trying to accomplish in those times when you're going out there? I mean, talk to us a little bit about that mound visit, because I know you've been doing it for a while, and you've probably seen just about everything on those mound visits too, haven't you?
You do. Those mound visits are always intriguing and interesting and so important. Especially now, you get strict 6 trips during a game, not like the old days. So you get 6 trips, you got to pick and choose your battles. But, I think as a coach, and you can only find this out, in my opinion, by being around the players every day, you got to find out what buttons you can push and which ones you can't. And so those mound visits are like pushing buttons. So I've made mound visits out there where the guy on the mound needs a kick in the rear end, and that ass chewing. Can I say that?
Yeah, absolutely.
to get them going. And other guys need a little bit of hey, let's catch your breath here. Let's refocus here. Let's look at this. We think you're doing this. And so it sometimes it's going out to praise a guy. Sometimes it's going out to be hard on a guy, because it doesn't do you any good to go out and jump on a kid that when you do that, he's going to go backwards and make it worse. Yeah. So it just depends on the pitcher, but some guys get chewed on. Some guys get, pat on the back or say, let's go, we need you here, and you're positive with them and those type things. We just had a kid this past weekend that's a left-handed pitcher that's could be really good. and his bullpens are so good. And when he gets in the game, it just goes to heck. Mm-hmm. So those last 3 weekends struggled. So I went out after watching this for 3 weekends, kind of frustrated because we've been working on it and hadn't been making any progress. So I go out and said, listen, when are you going to start being good? Because in the bullpen, you're really good. And you get out here. And I asked this, what do you think it is? He said, oh, it's all up here. It's no doubt. It's up here. Yeah. I said, well, let's do this. There was one out in the inning. He walked a couple guys, gave him a couple hits, and said, let's do this. I looked at the catcher and said, let's just throw 75% fastballs here, just like you do in your bullpens. I said, because I want you to throw 75% fastballs in your bullpens. The ball moves. It's in strike zone. It's electric. Let's just do that. So I said, we're not going to call anything. The catcher's not going to put any signs down. We're just going to throw fastballs here, and let's see what happens. And it was unbelievable. He goes out, gets the next 2 guys out, strikes a guy out, gets a little ground ball, and he's throwing 75% fastball because his ball moves 2 feet.
Yeah.
Wow. So he'd come in, and I said, let's just do that for the next couple of weeks and see how it works. And you could kind of see the light bulb go off a little bit. And he bullpenned today. Of course, he looked magnificent in his bullpen today. So I'm hoping it's going to translate this weekend to get him some success and a little bit of confidence. We talk about that in my coaching class today, which comes first, success or confidence. And you get some guys, well, you can't have success unless you have confidence. And some people argue the other way. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important to try to get kids, put them in an environment where they can have some success, and then it just kind of snowballs that confidence. There's no substitute for confidence, as you know.
Yeah.
We've got a kid on our team that pitches, and he don't throw over 80 miles an hour. He's a right-hander, throw over 80 miles an hour, but he can't throw a ball straight. And he's got that mental makeup. He really, truly believes he can get any hitter out in the country. He's got that mentality.
Yeah.
And he wants to pitch. We pitch him 1 inning in every game.
Yeah.
Because we'll use him in certain spots. He comes in, and he's out. He has mound presence like he throws 100 miles an hour. It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's unbelievable. And he gets guys out. Yeah. It's incredible. Guys going back to the dugout thinking, how did he just get me out? Yeah. But he believes he is better than the hitter every time he faces a hitter. He just has that belief.
And what's funny about that, Doug, is those guys are the guys too that they'll never lose that. They'll never. Yes. That will never leave him.
Yes.
Because he thinks that if you got a hit, you got lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, right? There's no doubt. You're exactly
okay,
right.
You got lucky. I'll get you out the next time.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And you have, at least on our teams, you've had very few of those guys. But those guys, they believe they can do anything.
Yeah.
They just have that confidence factor.
Doug, is that something that I'm always curious about this, and I guess it's probably being a position player, I'm always more fascinated about pitchers and kind of that whole thinking is that something that as a coach you're looking at and saying, this guy's got starter stuff, but reliever mentality, right? So maybe I'm going to have him more coming in, maybe to your point, like you get that max effort guy or somebody that you're like, you know what, if I could roll him out every 4 or 5 games, because if I try to get him to where he's coming out for an inning or 2 every game, I don't think he'll probably burn out because he's just all of a sudden, and you see that difference. It's always fascinating me how you can get guys that are just starters and they have good stuff. You try to make them a reliever and it just doesn't work out.
You're exactly right. And you have to tailor your pitching staff. And I'll tell you a trend that I've seen in at least in junior college in the last 5 years. And I've been thinking about this in my head. Do we need to start doing this? At this level, if you got 4 or 5 really good pitchers, you're in pretty good shape. But I've seen, and they were talking about this the other night on a big league game. The second time around on a pitcher's, the team's batting average goes up. The third time they see him in that same game, it just keeps going up. And I've noticed a lot of junior colleges that we play, they're using their pitchers in shorter stints. Their starters are going like 3 innings, and they'll bring the next guy in for 2 innings. And it kind of throws your timing off on your hitters. And I'm still kind of old school to where we want our starting pitcher to get us 6 or 7 innings in a 9-inning game. And I'm finding that our starters in about the fourth or fifth, they're starting to get racked around a little bit. And I'm sitting there thinking, do I need to change my outlook on this? Because like you said, our starting pitchers that we run out there are not max effort guys.
Yeah.
They're guys that kind of built for the long haul. But I also know that the third time around that they get seen, they're starting to get hit. And I'm sitting there thinking, maybe I'm going to have to tailor how we do our pitching, because it used to be we run our pitcher out there. We want our starting pitcher to get us a complete game or get us deep into the game. So when they got to use one other pitcher maybe to finish it. But, I'm starting to rethink this a little bit with, do we just run a guy out there for 3 innings and get him out?
I know Brandon has something he wants to say, but I one quick thing on that, because Corey Hunt, my friend Corey Hunt, who's a coach at Monticello High School in Virginia, also coaches in the Valley League with the Charlottesville Tom Sox, and he did this and won the Valley Championship 3 years ago, maybe now, where he had a starting pitcher for 4 innings. It really works out well in Summer League. Starting pitcher for 4 innings. You had another basically two starters every game. One's going 4, the other one's going the other 4. You had one oh shit guy, which is like, hey, it's just starting to fall apart. You're going to come in that second or third whenever we need you. And then you had your closer. The staff loved it because they're all getting work a lot more frequently, and you have more bounce back because you're not, going through as many innings. You're not necessarily having to wait those 3 or 4 days. Brandon?
Yes.
So Doug, so I've got a little kind of a theory on it. So I saw a stat that was pretty interesting the other day, where the Oakland Athletics back in, I think, 91 as a staff, it was like 85 to 92. It was something like that, complete games. And I think the entire Major League Baseball this year had maybe 100. It's crazy how they're using it, right? And at the junior college level, are you guys, and I was talking to a friend about this, and they were like, what do you think about that? And I said, well, I think it's more on the technology side, right? I mean, I now can – I was listening to the Braves game 2 nights ago, coming back from my son's football game. And one of the announcers goes, yeah, this guy throws a 4-seam fastball 66% of the time. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, if I knew that as a hitter, we just didn't have it back in the day. And so the guys facing the A's didn't have it back in the day. So it was a lot easier for the electric stuff that they threw to actually work, because guys couldn't sit on a tendency the way that they can today. Right?
Yes, I agree. I agree.
And it just makes makes your job as a coach that much more difficult, because you almost have to throw pitches when you used to waste 0-2 pitches, or you would waste one to set someone up, and you almost can't do that if it plays into your tendency, because he's going to get you
exactly right
the next time around, right? I mean, it's just it's weird how the technology has allowed the hitters to really take advantage of either a coach, a catcher, or a pitcher. You only need to latch on to one of them that has a tendency, because you know what those guys want to call, right?
100%.
So it's interesting.
Yes, it is, and it's changed baseball. And I've been coaching for a long time and old school, and technology has its place. And I'm not. I was telling John before I got on here, I said, I'm just happy that I've figured out how to turn the camera on this thing and get the volume where it works, because I'm not technologically advanced. But we've incorporated more and more technology here. Mm-hmm. And it's helped players with their development and stuff. I think I think sometimes if you do it too much, you can have that paralysis by analysis. Sure. Sometimes you overthink stuff, but some of that technology is really good stuff. And those tendencies now, even at our level, in the last 5 years, we're looking for tendencies from the other team's pitchers. I'm sure they're looking at it from us. The good programs do that. Yeah. And it really helps in how you're going to attack the opponent and what you're looking for. And it's definitely changed how we put our hitting lineup together, how much we go with our pitchers. 10 years ago, you're thinking that shooting not even 10 years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, you're thinking that in a tournament, if you're playing in a regional and you get your starting pitcher to get a complete game, your whole bullpen's rested.
Absolutely.
But you don't see that very often now.
Right.
It just, because of technology, understanding tendencies, that you use guys in shorter spurts, and then they might be able to come back on a day's rest and pitch in another game. So I'm really toying with that idea of changing it a little bit to that. We used to just ride a starter and ride him as long as we could, as long as his pitch count was down. But that's something that we're grappling with right now when it comes to how long we leave pitchers in, because I do see a tendency of that.
And look, I just thought about this, but it probably at the JUCO level, and maybe this is something to do with why you're seeing more of it. You think about how that can be marketed to those 4-year schools too, is that you have less innings on those arms too. So now this guy that came out of, Potomac State has only pitched, say, 60 innings this year versus 80 innings or whatever the case may be. And that's such a big thing as we start getting more and more into arm care.
Yes.
Especially for those 4-year schools now to be able to say, hey, this guy's got good stuff. And oh, by the way, he was one of this, didn't throw a ton of innings this year in either of the two, especially since you all play the fall schedule that you do. So I definitely can understand where that would be something big. Did you know you always wanted to be a coach? Like, was that something early on? How did that come about as far as that decision to get into coaching?
Yeah, I knew when I was playing in college baseball, my first year playing as a freshman in college baseball, I just knew for some reason that I was wanting to play professionally. I got to play 4 years of college baseball. I wasn't good enough to move on and play professionally, but I knew in college that I wanted to coach at the college level in baseball because I loved it so much at that level that I knew I wanted to coach. I tell people I'm weird because I knew at a young age that I wanted to coach. And I'm very fortunate I'm able to do that. I'm kind of living my second dream. I wanted to play in the big leagues, play professionally, but I wasn't good enough. So I'm kind of living my second dream. But I was fortunate. I did know at a young age that I wanted to do it. And I was able to do it. And I'm very fortunate. And, a friend of mine that Brian O'Connor at the University of Virginia, that year they won the national championship there a few years back. One of the commentators after it was over was asking him, did you always want to be the coach? And I remember him saying, I knew at a young age when I was in college that I wanted to be a coach. And I think it's the greatest profession on the planet. And, I don't consider it work.
Right.
My dad worked in the factory for 32 years and his health today is bad because of it. And he reminds me when I talk to him, he's like, what you do is not work. And he's exactly right. Yeah. I enjoy getting out of bed, going to it. I look forward to it every single day. Yeah. And it's not a grind, where you think, man, I have to go to work today. It's fun. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Oak. Are there guys that as a young coach, just had an influence on you? I mean, I'm sure there's got to be some folks that you either ran across at some on the camp circuit, or you just kind of saw and thought, that's the kind of program I want to run. Who was those guys that had that influence on you?
Well, probably my earliest coach was my Legion coach back in Parkersburg.
Yeah.
He was
15, right? Is that post 15?
Yeah, post 15. That's great memory.
I know.
He coached us, and he was a big brother to us, and he treated us fair. He treated us like we were kind of adults, and he let us have a little bit of room, but it was discipline. You knew what you could do and what you didn't do. And I really liked that approach. And I can remember thinking at a young age, I really like how he handles players, and I'd like to try to do that. And then just kind of coming up through coaching, I went to grad school right out of after I got my bachelor's degree at AB. I went to Eastern Kentucky University, and Jim Ward, who was the baseball coach there, he's God rest his soul, he's passed a few years ago, but he was one of the all-time greats in college baseball. And I got to spend a year with him. And you talking about a tactician and being organized, he was one of the best I've ever been around. And he was a big influence on me wanting to do it. And then as I got into coaching at a young age, Turtle Thomas was one of the guys you looked up to. Some of the guys, Ron Polk, Ron Frazier, those guys you watched, Mark Johnson, who was at Texas A&M at that time. You kind of looked up to those guys and you watched them and you studied them and you go to clinics and listen to them speak. Augie Garrido's another one. Boy, those guys were awesome. They're like the godfathers of college baseball. And when you go to a clinic or listen to them speak, it was just like being a sponge. You just sit there and you listen, and it was awesome. And so I've been fortunate that I got a chance to play for some good coaches and that were good people, good people skills. And I think some of the best coaches are guys that have great people skills and great communicators. Knowing X and O's is a big part of it, but really coaching is about handling people. And I don't think it does you any good as a coach that if you don't know how to handle people, you're probably not going to be successful.
Well, I think that's why you've been such a good recruiter over the years. I mean, I think when people, think about Doug Little, they think about recruiting first because you think about back to your time that you spent at WVU when you were recruiting coordinator. I mean, that team had 330 win seasons in the, I think 4 or 5 years you were there. That's recruiting, brother. I mean, that's all that stuff that you're doing. That's getting in the right guys, finding the right spot on the bus, so to speak, for them. Yep. But you got to have the right guys, and that's a really key thing. How have you evolved as a coach? So you've been doing this now for a minute, 25 years there at Potomac State. What's the biggest difference between the younger version of you as a coach to you think now?
Probably patience.
Yeah.
I think over time, and I'm still not a very patient person, and I wish I had more of it, but I think I am a lot more patient now than I was then. And coaching today is difficult too on the patience because we live in such a fast-paced society that needs instant gratification that, especially when it comes to performing sports skills, it takes time. And if you don't, if you're trying to make a change, you don't have success with it right away, well, I'm doing it wrong. And I think because of our society, it puts pressure on coaches and players to get better quicker. And sometimes, especially the skill part, as you know, it takes a long time to develop. I was watching Big League Game the other night, and they had a summary of these pitches up on the thing. It said four-seam fastball, 18 inches of movement, curveball, slider, and changeup. It said a work in progress. And it takes time to develop those. I heard Roger Clemens say one time he finally figured his changeup out in year 20 in the big leagues.
Wow.
So it takes time. So I think now my players probably wouldn't say this, but I think I'm a lot more patient now than I was then. I know former players come back and say, well, you are a lot more patient. You're mellowing out. So I think I've gotten probably a little bit more patient, probably more than anything.
Yeah.
I wish I had more of it though.
It's funny because I think that goes for all coaches, those classes that come back, they always say the same thing. Oh, coach, you're softer on this team.
Coach, what happened?
Yeah. What happened to you?
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you definitely do. Would any advice you give to the young coaches? We have a lot of young coaches that listen to this program as far as kind of as they're getting started in this thing. What would you go back and tell that younger version of yourself?
Listen more than you talk.
Yeah,
I think listen, watch, observe other coaches. I think that's one of the best ways of learning is observing, not talk it away. Just observe it and keep working hard.
Yeah, we have a friend of the show, Tyler Pazik, who wrote a book along with Greg Warburton. It's Ask More, Talk Less for Coaches. It's a really good book. And it talks about that, when all three of us were playing sports back in the day, it was a lot of those, just do what I tell you to do. No questions. You have to this is my way or the highway. And we found over time, it's not because we had to change that aspect of it because players got quote unquote softer or anything like that. It's just, that just wasn't very productive, right? I mean, it just wasn't the way to coach.
I agree.
With anything else, you have to seek first to understand. the player who's not getting it, it's not clicking, they're not getting that change up working the way they want, is start asking questions. And then we can figure out what it is. Maybe they don't understand the expectation, or they don't understand, and you can kind of guide them through that versus just telling and providing that information.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And as you know, it's a process. It takes some time. I can remember one year we flew up to play Boston College, and we flew into Logan, and they're always working on Logan Airport, the roads and stuff. And they had a sign I'll never forget. It said, "Please be patient with our mess. Remember, Rome wasn't built in a day." And underneath it said, "If it had been, we would have hired their contractor."
That's right. That's right.
I'll never forget that sign.
That's awesome.
But it's true. It takes time, and that's the tough part with society today. We want instant gratification right now, and for some things, it's not going to come right away.
Yeah. Well, it's social media, right? That adds to that idea of everything has to happen right now. It's, to your point, that instant gratification, because these players they don't sometimes, it's the old thing about Generation Y. The Y stands for why is it not happening right now? It's like just trying to figure out, that it doesn't, and it's going to have to take some work. And that's also part of that player that's on the bench and understanding you got to work while you wait, that it's just because you're not in the lineup today doesn't mean you can't be in the lineup tomorrow, but you have to start with yourself, and you got to start putting in the time, putting in the work, and then work yourself into that and come to the coach and ask him, what can I do to get into this lineup? Not coming to the coach or have your parents call the coach or anything like that,
Absolutely. And I really think that competition can drive kids to become better.
Yeah.
And we've had so many kids through the years that maybe as a freshman not play a whole lot. And then as a sophomore, they're right in the thick of it because there's an older guy ahead of them. My son's a freshman for us this year, and, we've got some steep competition at all four of our infield positions. And, the positions that he plays, there's really good players at those positions that are older, and he's up against those guys. And I really think that competition really helps make guys better if it's done right.
Yeah.
And, that's a big aspect of it.
It's funny, and I don't know if I've said this on the show. I know Brandon's probably heard me say this, but I tell all young players who come to me, especially when they get into college baseball, because just because you played shortstop in high school doesn't mean you're playing shortstop in college. Everybody played shortstop in high school.
Everybody.
Right? Yeah. So I always tell them, think like a lion. Is that, when you see the team taken in and out, like you can see where some of the players are that you could potentially compete against and work your way into the lineup, is go start taking balls. And I remember when I was at Garrett being a first baseman, I played first base in high school. I go up to Garrett and I run out on the field, and the first baseman is a guy by the name of Mick Bale, who you'll probably remember. He's an All-American.
That. Yeah, I remember him.
Just used to rake. And I remember just seeing this mammoth of a man, looked like he was about 40. And I was like, who's this dude, And they're like, oh, that's Mick Bale. He's a returning All-American. I walk back in the dugout, put my first baseman's glove down, go to third base. I'm like, I'm third base now. That's right.
No, you're right. And that's a smart thing to do. That's part of it. And kids, like you said, kids have got to feel their way through that. And, and I think in any good college baseball program, there's going to be competition at every position. Yeah. And kids know going in, we tell our guys this, and really in any good college baseball program, every player on the team was their high school team's best player. So it's a collection of all-stars. And, you can only play 9 guys. We're going to play the 9 best guys can help us win games. And, you might be that 9, you might be the 10th or 11th guy, but you got to work your way in. You're going to get your opportunities. And when you get your opportunities, you got to make the best of them. If we run a pitcher out there and hadn't pitched much and he strikes everybody out, we're going to keep running him out there.
Yeah.
If we have a hitter that goes out there and gets base hits all the time, because 3 for 4 in every game or 2 for 3, we're going to keep running him out there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. I mean, and it's the idea that, and just because you don't have those 2 or 3 games in a row, keep showing up, keep being ready, keep working at it or whatever, because that guy that's on that hot streak, he may all of a sudden be followed up. Tony Gwynn used to say that most hitting streaks are followed by a slump, because what happens is hitters start seeing the ball too big. They start thinking about placing the ball in different locations. And now all of a sudden you start getting outside of those mechanics that what allowed you to get in that hitting streak. And now because you're trying to do too much or get too cute, you end up being in a slump. So just be ready for when that guy gets into that.
It's going to happen. You're going to get your chance.
Yeah.
You need to get back into coaching, John.
Yeah. Well,
you really do.
Well, this is my version of coaching and being able to get and work with you guys on different things, because to your point, I saw that big gap between the mental side of it. And I recognized early on over, the years of coaching that the talent, it's like just so many times you would see these really great 5 o'clock hitters for BP or those guys, to your point, that throw great in the pen, and whatever happens from that sideline to or practice to the game, and you have to figure out it's something. And you said something earlier about confidence, and you'll love this one, because we've had enough conversations over the years on the mental approach. We have a guy that's a PGA sports psychologist on the PGA Tour, and he talks about this difference, Doug, of, you can't wait around for confidence. You got to be committed to everything you do. Commitment's bigger than confidence. And he says that, whether you're a pitcher, hitter, whatever the case may be, is have that plan, commit yourself to that plan, be ready to compete. Ken Ravizza talks about it, of course, as the 3 C's: is control, or am I under control, and commit to the plan, and then go and compete. And, Dr. Mo, I love it. And I've probably brought this up on at least 4 different shows now, ever since he talked about it, but he says, we can't wait for you to be confident. It's not confidence may not show up today, but you're going to have to be committed to everything you do today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all those things like you talked about is being prepared, showing up every single day. That stuff's going to eventually lead to you playing in confidence.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, that we try to do as good a job of as we can is trying to get players to go game speed in practice. And that's hard to do sometimes, because they're, in a game, it's easy to be motivated for a game, and practice, we're going to do these drills and stuff. But we try to really put an emphasis on players doing things full speed, just like in a game speed. So when it happens in the game, and we actually try to make sometimes our practice situations more difficult than what the game's going to be. Yeah. So when the game happens, they're a little bit more relaxed, they're prepared, and they can perform better.
I love that.
But all that stuff, adds up, and that's what makes it fun.
Oh, no question. It's you mentioned earlier, military, it's a deliberate discomfort. And that's something that, and I want all the listeners to understand this. Follow Potomac State Baseball, follow Coach Little on social media, because one of the things that's always impressed me about with your all social media is you all make those games, to your point, so real as far as your practices, the game like is to, even when you're doing an intra-squad, it's on social media like, hey, we have an intra-squad game today at 1 o'clock or whatever. Like, you want people showing up and watching those games, because that's also adding to that, kind of atmosphere of like, this is game like, we're, and you all bill it like a regular game. It's not just an intra-squad game. Like, that's just, it's a little thing that maybe a lot of people wouldn't notice, but I think it makes a huge difference with your players being able to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's Coach Schaefer, because he's the tech guy over there.
I knew we were going to give one credit to Coach Schaefer by the time it was all done tonight. Don will be happy about that.
He's awesome, and he's so good on all that stuff. He's great with our hitters and the social media stuff. He and that's a big part of recruiting too. Like you say, that's a big part of it, and getting kids' interest and stuff. Yeah.
Well, talking about your program, we've held you long enough tonight. Let's talk about some of the fundraisers, because I know, people don't understand. I mean, at junior college level, it's not like you're just rolling out, all the scholarships and have all the money to buy, 5 or 6 hack attacks or anything like that. You got to go out and fundraise for them. You want it, you got to go get it. So I know you guys do the 100-inning game every year, and you got a fundraiser going on right now. Talk to us about some of those things.
Our 100-inning game, we've been doing it for several years, and it's not as bad as it sounds. It's 100 innings. We have a lot of stipulations and it goes pretty quick. We can do it in 6 or 7 hours. But it's been a huge fundraiser. And I would encourage young coaches, coach at the high school level, college level. It's such an easy fundraiser. We have each of our guys send out 20 letters to people that they think is going to sponsor. We pay the postage, send it out. There's a return envelope in there, and people can sponsor by the inning. And we've done this for years. And like you said, in junior college, you got budget shortfalls, and we've been fortunate. This raises $15,000 to $20,000 for us.
Wow.
It takes the players 2 days to kind of lick their envelopes, put the names. Here's another interesting thing. I just assume players knew how to write envelopes, but they don't write letters anymore. It's all email.
Yeah.
So I had to show them how to fill out an envelope and write the address on there and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, these players today, they don't know about writing love letters to your girlfriend.
That's right.
There wasn't cell phones.
Yeah.
And but we raised $15,000 to $20,000, and it allows us to do the things that we need to do. We're playing that this year, October the 30th, and our players started sending their mail out today. We've even got so sophisticated that on our website you can use a credit card
There you go,
man.
What's that website, Doug? Let's get that out there. What's the website they can go to?
Well, I appreciate that. If you just go to www.potomacstatecollege.edu, go to athletics, then baseball, you can click right on it right there. And last year we had a phenomenal return on it, and our guys do a really good job with it. And we're looking for another good one this year. And we do in the spring we do a sponsor number, to where people can pay to get a T-shirt, and they sponsor the numbers of our players. And that's been a good fundraiser for us. And all of those two together really help us do things that we need to do in order to try to keep our program at a high level.
Well, and I tell you, the money is well spent, because whether it's within giving back to the players as far as, their travel costs and all the other things that go into it, and the equipment and different things like that. But just that facility, if you guys ever get a chance, they're listening, stop by, look at that schedule, and get over to Kaiser, West Virginia, and see Golden Park, because it's one of the top beautiful facilities.
I'm looking at it right now. It is a beautiful facility.
Yeah, and it's such a great backdrop with the mountains, and you can sit up on the hillside and watch a game, bring a blanket with you, whatever the case may be. But it is. And man, you talk about some of those pictures on social media when that sun's setting on, that's when you really find out why it's called Golden Park.
Hey, pump the brakes, Garrison Keeler.
I'm like Norman Rockwell.
For real, you're going to make me cry.
It's like I was doing the Field of Dreams speech.
Picnic,
build it, Ray.
Just a potato salad, maybe a fried chicken or two.
Get a nice sandwich. Soda pop, all that stuff. Well, Doug, we can't thank you enough, man. I mean, like I said earlier, I'm a huge fan. I probably have helped steer as many players as I could over the years to Potomac State and to your point, when you learn what the coach is all about, when you learn what the program's all about, and I was blessed to work with you guys a little bit a couple of years ago, it's easy to just say, hey, if you're looking for a place to play, you're not ready to, you want to get that 2 years or so. I'm such a proponent of junior college baseball for so many reasons, classroom size, everything. Some of the best baseball I ever played in my life was against that Region 20 competition that you guys see all the time. So it's a really, really good fit, and they got the right person for the job up there. And it's shown for 25 years now.
Well, I appreciate that very much. And we enjoyed you working with us a couple of years ago, and would love to get you involved again sometime. I know you're busy, but I appreciate the kind words and all the promotion. And thank you guys very much for having me on here. I've been looking forward to this all day.
Yeah, it's great. And this won't be your only visit. I always screw that up. Brandon was waiting for me to screw it up, because every time we have a guest, I say it won't be your first visit, and Brandon's always like, that was their first visit. Like, quit saying that. So yeah, but it will definitely be getting you back on maybe sometime over the winter or something like that, whenever you guys are. I know it's a little bit more downtime. You're getting out in that hitting facility, that nice facility you guys have. and you're going to want to escape some of the cold winters up there,
Exactly.
And, yeah, we'll get you back on, but thanks again. We really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thanks, bud.
I appreciate it. Good talking to you guys.
You too.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.